I am Brooke Chandler, 36 years old. I used to believe that if I was precise enough, quiet enough, and always on time, someone would eventually notice. But then the brass nameplate outside the conference room was replaced without a word. No email, no farewell. Just the light catching a new line, Tyler Grayson, VP Finance. Oh, thought you'd already been moved. No one corrected it. No one called. And I understood some erasures don't come with noise. They come with access revoked, and no one remembering you were ever there. Some silences aren't quiet, they're precise. I arrived early more out of habit than purpose. The lights in the hallway were still warming up, buzzing faintly overhead, and the scent of toner clung to the shared printer like it had been used all night. A few emails had already trickled in, nothing urgent. I passed the main boardroom without thinking, but something halted me. The glass door was closed. Behind it, silhouettes moved in formal rhythm. Jackets, laptops, the familiar pattern of PowerPoint transitions on the wall. I stepped closer. The placard read, Executive Strategy Alignment. It wasn't on my calendar. It always had been. Someone inside turned toward the door for half a second, then looked away. No wave, no gesture. The latch clicked softly from the inside. My badge still worked. The security system hadn't caught up yet. I walked back toward my office, trying not to notice the slight difference in the hallway light, how it no longer reflected off my brass nameplate. It had been replaced. Tyler Grayson, VP Finance, and I'm still shiny, a role that used to root through my inbox for compliance approval. At the corner coffee station, I poured water into a chipped mug I never brought home. A voice behind me came with no inflection. Oh, I thought you'd already been moved. Not a question. Not even directed at me exactly. Just released into the air. The mug rattled slightly when I set it down. I adjusted my sleeve. One thread near the cuff had unraveled. Back at my desk, the monitor lit up with a blink. I opened the shared drive folder, Strategic Alignment Materials, the one I had built 2 years ago. A gray message popped up. You no longer have permission to view this folder. No punctuation, no explanation. The mouse hovered. I didn't click again. I didn't forward anything. Instead, I opened a private folder on my desktop, one I kept without reason labeled only with my initials. I see the final compliance report from last week there, formatted in the structure I'd created with the same template Tyler had once asked me to walk him through. I didn't write a note, didn't rename the file. The upload bar filled slowly, then stopped. I sat still. The thread at my wrist curled again against my skin, catching faint light. I understood then some removals don't come with noise. They come with access, revoked quietly. I used to believe that being useful was enough. There was a time I stayed late just to recheck decimal placements in quarterly filings, watching cells light up green or red in the quiet glow of an empty floor. The janitor once left a sticky note on my monitor. Still here. I didn't remove it for days. I kept a printout of the compliance framework tucked behind my keyboard, creased at the corners, underlined in pencil. I didn't need it, but I liked the feeling of preparedness. When Tyler joined, I brought him a copy with the index tagged, not laminated, just stapled. He didn't take it from my hands. I'll circle back when things settle. They never did. Most of my emails ended with, "Let me know how I can help." Few got replies. The ones that did came back with no greeting, no signature, just corrections. At meetings I sat 2 chairs from the end. Not because of hierarchy, it's where the notes taker usually sat. I never volunteered. I was just already writing when they looked up. They used words like consistent, thorough, discreet. No one used promotable. No one used my name when introducing the team. Once I submitted a 6-page proposal, streamlined audit checks, flagged risk categories by color. Clear. Quiet. It was returned with a post-it. We're not shifting processes right now. No feedback. No markups. The corner still held my fingerprint smudge. I didn't reprint it. When someone missed a deadline, I fixed it. When someone misfiled a report, I corrected the tag and never mentioned it. I believed that if I made fewer waves than I cleaned, they would find space for me. I learned how to predict what they'd forget. The printer tray, the quarterly summary, the final signature on the ethics renewal form. My name never showed on the summary pages. Still, I reviewed every line. At the holiday dinner, someone clinked a glass and toasted the real engines of this place. Laughter followed. Then a voice. She's not flashy, but she stays in her lane. The applause skipped over me. I folded my napkin in half, then in half again. I didn't correct them. Some things once repeated often enough don't need to be said aloud again. Some erasures don't come with a strike, just a slow fade no one notices. The invitation had arrived folded unevenly, the paper thinner than usual. My name was printed near the bottom 2 letters transposed. Not enough to be another person, but enough to not quite be me. I traced the misspelling once with my thumb, then placed it under a stack of policy drafts I hadn't been asked to review. The room for the appreciation dinner was too cold, the kind of cold that made sleeves feel stiff. Everyone's place cards stood upright, bold letters in gold ink. Mine was handwritten in black pen lowercase. Someone had crossed out the first version and rewritten it above. During the audit quarter, I had compiled 6 binders color-coded and labeled with all supporting documents indexed by regulation. The day we passed the review, Tyler clinked his glass and nodded toward the head of the table. Couldn't have done it without leadership stepping up. No one looked in my direction. The week we secured the patent clearance deal, there were custom mugs on each desk. White ceramic with printed names and the company crest. Mine was different brushed steel, no label, the type given to new hires before they're issued official gear. I didn't swap it. It held heat longer. There was once a post-it note left on my screen in thick blue ink. Check Tlum 12B. Might resurface later. I pinned it beside my monitor. It stayed there for 14 months. Klotol's B never came up again. When Rick Malloy ran into trouble with a clause he didn't flag, I rewrote the language for him. I sent the updated document directly, no watermark, no credit. At the quarterly debrief, he leaned back in his chair, arms folded. Some of us know how to stay sharp. No one turned toward me. My mother once told me during dinner after passing the peas, and a quiet silence too wide to step over, not everyone needs to be remembered. Some people are meant to hold the rest together quietly. I didn't finish my plate. Sometimes in the stillness before sleep, a phrase loops through my head like a message accidentally left behind. We see you. But no one ever said it. And somehow that made it feel more permanent. Some words are polished so smooth they no longer carry weight, just direction. I was told to be in the East Conference Room by 10. No subject line, no calendar note, just a forwarded thread with my name in lowercase buried beneath initials I didn't recognize. The room smelled faintly of lemon oil and new carpet. Everything looked arranged, 3 bottles of water, evenly spaced pens, and a printed copy of the org chart turned upside down at the head of the table. Brad Whitaker adjusted his sleeves before speaking. His watch was still set 5 minutes fast. We've made the decision to integrate compliance under finance, streamlining leadership, and enhancing operational cohesion. He used the word realign 3 times. No one else moved. I kept my hands folded over the open page of my notebook. The ink had bled slightly where I'd written 2 weeks ago CL12B. Check. I hadn't crossed it out. Rick Malloy leaned back with one ankle resting on his knee. His tie had a wrinkle near the knot. You know we've never paid severance for women who get restructured. His smile barely stretched. No one corrected him. I didn't close the notebook. I didn't touch the water bottle. Across the table, someone flipped through the printed slides like they were reviewing a menu they'd already memorized. This isn't personal. Just efficiency. Another voice clipped and neutral. I scanned the bottom of the handout nearest me. My name wasn't listed on any of the new reporting lines. They had drawn the map already. They were only handing me a copy. I remembered once hearing my father at a family barbecue telling a cousin not to take too long with college. Don't be the kind of woman who gets replaced by a workflow chart. No one had laughed. I glanced at the corner of my folder. One tab was torn, the red plastic frayed where I'd pulled it too quickly last month. I could have argued. I could have pointed out the errors in Q1 reporting Tyler had approved. But I didn't. The room didn't want accuracy, it wanted agreement. Some exits don't come with a door, just a table where no one expects you to return. I pressed my pen gently into the spiral binding and let the page stay open. Even unfinished, it said enough. Some decisions don't arrive all at once. They take shape in the absence of interruption. I started with the smallest things. The drawer on the right held 2 inkless pens, a broken clip, and a paperclip chain I'd made once while waiting on an overdue report. I left them untouched. The framed certificate from my first compliance course was behind the door where no one ever looked. The glass had a fine crack in one corner. I removed it without a sound, slipped it into the canvas folder I brought in on quiet days, the kind no one checked. The shelf above my desk had dust where the mug used to be the one with crooked letters printed off center. Someone had taken it. There was no note, no exchange, only the ghost ring where it had sat. My old planner was still there, its spine soft from use. Tucked inside was a faded dry cleaning tag once used as a bookmark. I hadn't worn that blazer in months. I kept the tag, not the book. The sticky note marked CL12B came off easily. The corner folded back in my palm like something waiting to be retired. I opened the drawer where I stored a granola bar, 2 tea bags, and a half-used pack of gum. I took none of it. I zipped the folder closed and stood. Outside the glass wall near reception, the light was already shifting. No one looked up when I walked past the break room. The refrigerator still hummed. Someone laughed faintly behind a closed door. Near the main hallway, the awards shelf caught the overhead lights with too much confidence. Tyler's face stared forward in crisp lighting, the silver frame angled just so. Excellence through initiative. There was space for more frames, but none had been added. I placed my badge on the front counter. It slid a short distance on the smooth surface before stopping on its own. The receptionist didn't notice. The doors opened before I reached them, not because of recognition, just because that's what they're designed to do. As I stepped outside, the fluorescent lights behind me reflected faintly on the glass. They stayed on. Nothing dimmed. I didn't speak. I didn't linger. Some departures aren't exits. They're closures no one marks but you. Some routines don't vanish. They just go quiet until you notice what's no longer expected of you. The apartment had no dormer, no front desk, no coded elevator. I unlocked the door with a key that turned twice and stuck slightly at the end. The living room was small but square, with one shelf already warped and a patch of uneven paint behind the radiator. Still, it didn't echo. I unpacked slowly. One box for paper files, another for items that no longer belonged anywhere. The folders were marked by fiscal year. I didn't label the new ones. I slid them onto the shelf above the kitchen sink, right beside a chipped mug I found in the cabinet. The mornings felt longer without a digital calendar. No pop-ups, no buzz. I didn't check my email because there was nothing to miss. Instead, I boiled water on the stove. The kettle had a loose lid, so it rattled once before settling. I poured into a ceramic cup with no matching saucer and stirred nothing in. The wooden table near the window had 3 scratches and a round, faded watermark I couldn't scrub out. On it, I placed a small flash drive, black plastic with worn edges. A white label peeled slightly at the corner, CYA block letters, scribbled in marker years ago. I hadn't opened it since March. I hadn't forgotten what was inside. Midge, the stray who started showing up at the fire escape now, lived with me. She slept near the window, one paw tucked under her chest, her tail curled like a question without urgency. On the USB, a set of folders. Audit exceptions was 22. Malloy Clause Archive. Q2, deviation internal notes. CL2B, draft flag. I hadn't included them in my formal exit report. I hadn't deleted them either. The resignation form came by mail with 2 carbon copies and a line I'd left blank. Near the bottom, pre-stamped "No response provided." I folded the form in half and filed it under a drawer with takeout menus. The light through the curtain striped the floor in soft gold. The clock on the wall ticked without sound. I looked at the flash drive, then at the second hand moving slow and sure. Not everything needed action. Some things just needed to stay intact. SIL 12B still holds. I didn't plug it in. I didn't need to. Some outreach isn't connection, it's containment. The subject line came in all lowercase. The body of the message used phrases like revisit the terms and mutual understanding. The signature block was centered, framed by a mission statement I'd once proofread. I didn't open the attachments. Trina Dorsey's name hadn't appeared in my inbox since the offboarding notice. Now, it arrived at 8:07 a.m., sharp, as if punctuality might soften intent. The second message came from an unfamiliar number. Just wondering if you might still have access to your earlier compliance reviews, particularly Q2 edits. Board is asking. No greeting, no sign-off, just a question disguised as a check-in. I didn't respond. On the corner of the table, the flash drive sat untouched. I moved it aside to make room for my tea. The base left a faint ring on the wood, darker at one edge. Mid-morning, a text came through, unmarked contact CFO, says you're sitting on a bomb. They're holding night calls. Just thought you should know. I didn't reply to that either. The cat stirred at the sound of the kettle. I poured without measuring. The steam rose clean, unbothered. Somewhere between the noise of caution and the silence of consequence, there's a space people try to fill with false civility. They hadn't called to check on me. They hadn't written when I stepped out. Now, with numbers under revision and clauses under scrutiny, they suddenly remembered the person who kept receipts, not to thank, but to contain. I opened a folder on my desktop, created a new one beneath it, labeled it, without flourish, whistleblower threads. Inside it, I saved nothing for now. It was enough that the name existed, that somewhere someone might wonder what lived inside it. During a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago, my sister had laughed at my job title. So, basically you babysit spreadsheets for a living. No one corrected her. My father refilled his glass. My mother folded a napkin with too much precision. They never asked what I built. only what I earned. And now strangers typed around me with practiced ambiguity, offering courtesy in exchange for silence. But silence when earned, not coerced, has weight. I didn't delete the messages. I didn't write back. Some answers speak loudest when left in draft. Some changes don't happen with ceremony. They just stop needing permission. The library paid by the hour. I logged my own time, filed the slips in a wire basket by the back desk, and chose the morning shifts because the lighting was softest then. The shelves didn't mind if I moved slowly. I wore plain shirts now, sleeves rolled twice, collar pressed just enough. A pair of worn black flats sat beneath my chair soles, thinned at the heels. No one asked where I came from. I didn't offer. The earbuds I wore were small, pale grey, barely visible beneath my hair. I listened to nothing. Some days just wore them to quiet the world. At home, I no longer read productivity blogs. I didn't sort my week into categories. There was no Q3 target, no growth benchmark. There was space. One Saturday, I walked to the cafe near the park, the one with scuffed tile and wooden chairs that always leaned slightly left. My fingers curled around a cardboard cup sleeve slightly torn. Near the window, I saw them. 4 of them former co-workers, laptops open, animated, a screen reflected off Tyler's glasses. He gestured towards something laughing into his shoulder. He didn't look up. I didn't step back. I stood long enough to take one sip, then turned toward the door. Not with urgency, just choice. There was a time I would have ducked behind the pastry case. A time I would have wondered what they were saying, whether my name had surfaced, whether I still had a shadow there. Now, I didn't need to disappear. I just no longer needed to be seen. Years ago, at a family gathering, my aunt had pulled me aside near the coat closet. Her nails were painted too dark for the season. You know, Brooke, if no one notices you, maybe it's because you don't take up enough space. I had nodded then, not because I agreed, but because silence cost less than defending something I hadn't finished building. Later that night, I opened my laptop. No alarms, no unread messages. I clicked on the folder marked Whistleblower Threads. Inside the file titled Clause 12 Bool Final Path sat untouched. I opened it once more, not to update, not to send, just to read it like a person who had nothing left to prove. The cursor blinked. I smiled. And that was enough. Some things don't need to be burned to be finished. They just need to be filed. I printed the letter on thick off-white stock. The title sat centered in the same font I used for risk disclosures. Settlement Acknowledgement. Confidential Agreement Enclosed. No logo. No emotion. Just the sentence and a small paperclip securing the signed copy of the release. The ink had dried clean. The signatures were clear 4 board members, 1 external counsel. I folded the packet twice along its natural crease. The envelope had no window. I sealed it with firm pressure, smoothing the edge with the side of my thumb until the adhesive held. Next to it, I placed the second sheet. Petition for removal of legal responsibility. Chandler Brooke. Stamped. Certified. Initialed by a clerk I didn't know. At the bottom, replaced by Counsel of Record Tessa Longman, Haley Law Group. I didn't know her. I chose her because she didn't know me either. I walked the 5 blocks. No rideshare, no call ahead, just the sound of my own steps and the envelope warm against my palm. Inside the building, the reception desk had been moved 6 inches left. Someone had realigned the rug. The plants were real now. A stack of branded notepads sat by the window. I stood quietly in line behind a man holding a contract in a blue folder. When it was my turn, I placed the envelope on the desk and slid it forward with 2 fingers. The receptionist glanced at it. "I'll make sure this goes straight to Ms. Longman." She didn't smile. I didn't wait. As I turned, the elevator opened behind me. I didn't rush. Years ago, in a grocery store parking lot, my father once looked over a missed call from me and slipped the phone back into his pocket. If it was urgent, she would have found someone else. I'd never brought it up again. Some messages are clearest when unspoken. I entered the elevator. No one else followed. The floor numbers lit up slowly. Behind me, the glass door closed itself steady, automatic final. I didn't press the last page into anyone's hand. I didn't wait for a reply. Some closures don't come with signatures, but they count anyway. Some peace doesn't announce itself, it just takes the place of what used to ache. The kettle hissed once before settling into quiet. I poured the water slowly, letting it steep longer than necessary. The light from the window cast soft lines across the wooden counter, thin and almost gold, where it hit the edges of the ceramic cup. On the table sat a wooden letter tray. This time it held no legal notices, no firm-headed stationery, only a water bill folded cleanly in thirds, and a postcard from the library reminding me the new shelving carts had arrived. I opened the drawer by the sink, the one that sticks slightly to the left. Inside was a small cloth handkerchief, white fraying at the edge. My mother had once stitched my name in the corner, but only the B remained intact. I folded it in half and wiped the thin layer of dust from the lowest shelf, not out of necessity, but because the gesture felt rooted. Midge stretched at my feet, paws extended like she meant to stay in place. She blinked once, slow and half curious, then settled again as if nothing needed her attention. Outside, the mint plant leaned slightly toward the railing. A new shoot was rising beside the older stalk, still tender, not yet shaped. I didn't touch it. The silence was not hollow. It held no pending calls, no drafts waiting for edits, no doors half open with questions behind them. I reached for a folder tucked behind a row of cookbooks. It bore a label I hadn't changed in months. Clause 12B, archived. I flipped the cover open to the first page. The headers were aligned, the references annotated, the language sharp in its restraint. No edits were needed, no updates due. I slid it into a storage box beside the desk, pressed the flap shut, and labeled it clearly, no further action needed. There was no final speech, no burst of music, no need to rehearse meaning. I sat with the tea warm between my palms. The steam rose and softened before it reached my face. I didn't smile wide. I didn't whisper anything into the quiet. I just nodded once small and certain. I had been here, and I had lived rightly.